Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know this rush hour of May 21, Tuesday. I'm Riza Diaz. Jump-starting today's rush with Comelec hell-bent on finishing the canvassing of the last two remaining COCs. Now, if this pushes through, we may see a fresh batch of lawmakers on the stands tonight. JC Cosico has the details.
Just 2 more certificates of canvass to go, and we may have a new batch of senators to be proclaimed later today. As of 8:47 p.m. last night, the Comelec setting as the National Board of Canvassers were able to collect 165 of the total 167 COCs, including those from the special elections held in Jones, Isabela. Now, the poll body is just waiting for the one from Saudi Arabia and another from Washington, D.C., which are equivalent to over 500,000 votes. At the current standing, this remaining number would still be enough to give re-electionists Bam Aquino and JV Ejercito the boost they need to enter the Magic 12, should the odds be in their favor. Right now, the ranking of the senatorial candidates remain unchanged, with the majority being administration bets. Senator Cynthia Villar is still on top, followed by Grace Poe. Bongo, Pia Cayetano, and Bato de la Rosa round up the top 5. Lito Lapid still at the 7th place, followed by Aimee Marcos, Francis Tolentino, and Senator Coco Pimentel. Bong Revilla is still at the 11th spot, and capping the magic circle so far is Senator Nancy Binay. Should the last two COCs be canvassed today, Comelec will then proclaim the winning senators later this evening, while party list groups will have their proclamation on Wednesday. The poll body meanwhile says they're also preparing for the possible attendance of President Rodrigo Duterte and the proclamation rites, although there is no official word yet from Malacanang.
We don't know for sure, but because he did come to the filing of the COC, that is something that we're preparing for as well. No? So naghahanda tayo, and which means also we're not just preparing for his arrival security-wise, but we're also preparing a space for him and his entourage on the floor for tomorrow.
For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
The PPCRV has finished its examination of the Comelec's transparency server audit logs, but the election watchdog says there is nothing anomalous after or about the 7-hour transmission delay on Election Day. Greg Gregorio has this report.
The Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, or PPCRV, has found nothing unusual in the 7-hour transmission delay of initial poll results. The poll watchdog released its findings based on the audit logs of the Comelec transparency server. Though they confirmed a technical bottleneck that caused the delay from the transparency server, the PPCRV says Comelec must still explain.
The PPCRV is not in a position to declare or to conclude why the bottleneck happened. We only can say that the bottleneck happened. And I think we have to ask the Comelec to continue to explain to our public why it happened. Because they own the server, they own the environment, and they are in the best position to open up all the details at that given point in time.
The PPCRV, however, is also urging other technical experts to conduct their own separate investigations of the audit logs. The PPCRV is also requesting for a copy of the transmission router logs and a copy of the Comelec central server data after the proclamation.
Okay, there's a lot of talk about the transmission portion of when the VCM sends the results to all of us. To the 3 servers that we had discussed. We obviously want to see in between how that data or how the data traveled.
For now, the PPCRV said they will continue to manually encode their copies of the election returns to check if it matches the data transmitted by the vote counting machines. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Here are the biggest stories from the dailies. Despite the lack of official proclamation, leading senatorial bets Bongo and Bato de la Rosa now have their respective Senate committee assignments. Filipino Star ngayon reports that this was concluded after the Senate Majority Bloc Caucus on Monday. Senator Mig Zubiri revealed that Go has requested chairmanship of the Committee on Health. Meanwhile, De La Rosa, who led Duterte's war on drugs, will replace Senator Ping Lacson as chairman of the Senate Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs. The Philippine Star reports that the lower chamber has approved on the third and final reading a bill on mandatory ROTC for senior high school students. House Bill 8961 seeks to enforce basic military training on all grades 11 to 12 students as a prerequisite for graduation. But Kabataan Party List Representative Sara Ilago says this was done without review. She adds that the lower house did not have any status report on the cases of harassment, hazing, and corruption in the program. And this from Business World. Senate leader says the 17th Congress will end without tax reforms pushed by the executive department. Senate President Tito Soto said the upper chamber will prioritize the passing of the anti-terrorism bill, the security of tenure bill, the expanded anti-wiretapping bill, and the lowering of age of criminal responsibility. Now, these bills await a second reading approval in the Senate, with the exception of the anti-terrorism bill, which is in the committee level. But despite the opposition of Senate leaders, Senator Win Gatchalian is still pushing for the sin tax hike with only 9 days left in session. If passed, tobacco prices or taxes will jump to 90 pesos per pack. Here's the report.
Senator Win Gatchalian is confident that the tobacco tax hike bill can be passed in 9 session days as Congress is set to adjourn on June 7. In a press briefing, Gatchalian called on Health Department, the Finance Department, and health advocates to encourage his fellow senators to pass the sin tax measure, which aims to protect Filipinos from the ill effects of tobacco use.
Nasa final point na tayo eh. Kayang-kaya pa ho with 9 session days. Kung overtime ho to, kayang-kaya mapasa ho to. Gagawin ko rin yung aking responsibilidad na kulitin, kalampagin at kausapin po yung ating mga mambabatas.
The proposed tax hike for tobacco products is also expected to help fund universal health care. According to the Health Department, the number of smokers among the youth and the poor decreased in 2012 upon the enactment of a tobacco tax hike. This development helped the department save and redirect funds into other health projects. But as the economy flourished, so did the ability of the consumers to afford costlier cigarettes, thus the need to raise the tax again.
Mas mabilis pong lumago ang ating ekonomiya kaysa sa pagtaas ng buwis sa tabako. So yung dati pong naging unaffordable o masyadong mahal para sa kabataan, ngayon po kaya na po nila uling bilhin ang sigarilyo.
Without a further tax hike, cigarette smoking is expected to cause up to 250,000 deaths each year. Around 30 medical associations have already pledged support for the bill, which is the third of its kind in the Senate. Earlier this year, President Duterte certified the bill proposing to double the tax on cigarettes to 60 pesos per pack. But in the recent senatorial caucus, it appears that the tobacco tax hike bill won't be tackled, as senators decided to prioritize bills pending for second and third reading. Currently, the respective tobacco tax hike bills of Senator Gatchalian, Senator Manny Pacquiao, and Senator J.V. Ejercito are still pending before the Senate Committee on Ways and Means. For News 5, Justine Punsalang, we are One News.
Meanwhile, here are the other bills lawmakers have been working on. The House of Representatives passed on the third and final reading a measure seeking to reimpose a death penalty for drug possession cases. House Bill 8909, which is an amendment to the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, got 155 affirmative votes and 0 negative votes and abstentions. Under the proposed law, a person found possessing illegal drugs at a party or any social gathering may face penalties of life imprisonment to death and a fine of 500,000 to 10 million pesos. Over at the Senate, the focus was on the labor force, particularly those who face Manila traffic. The upper chamber approved the bill giving employers and employees the option to adopt flexi-time arrangements at work. Now, under the bill, alternative working hours could be up to 48 hours per week as long as the employees will still be entitled to their benefits. Now, in other news, if you're using a Huawei phone, it's okay. You don't need to trade it for another brand just yet. The Chinese smartphone giant insists its operations will continue despite being blacklisted by the US. Huawei says they've got the ban covered by stockpiling on chips and components. And while other tech companies have severed their ties with Huawei, Google says its software will continue to work on Huawei's Android devices. But take this with caution. Analysts say new handsets may have issue with the operating system if the US ban on Huawei continues.
There's a new attack on an Android phone, and if there's no more support from Google, they will not be able to upgrade and secure their phones. That they would be prone to malicious attackers. They would have outdated software. They would be prone to phishing. They would be prone to malware, viruses, and so on and so forth. For the consumers, basically, the Western market is telling China-made products cannot be trusted.
PLDT Smart, meanwhile, assures its customers that Huawei handsets will continue to function normally on their network. Coming off from a 5G deal with Huawei, PLDT Smart says it will continue to work with Huawei in addressing future firmware and software updates. Globe is also saying the same, assuring its consumers that the current situation will not impact their network services. Globe says Huawei will continue to provide security updates and sales services to its device users in the Globe network. From tech news, let's move on to the other area of science, and that is the weather. And with that, don't forget to bring your umbrellas as thunderstorms are still possible throughout the country, especially in the afternoon and in the evening. That's pretty normal as the hot weather causes more water to evaporate into the atmosphere. Now, speaking of scorching heat, stay cool and keep yourselves hydrated as heat indices, particularly in Luzon, may still reach over 40 degrees Celsius from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. Speaking of weather, winter has finally come to an end as HBO's Game of Thrones aired its season finale on Monday. No spoilers on the last episode, but the much-awaited finale did not end on a high note with fans. On film review site Rotten Tomatoes, the series rated only 57%. The site explained that the bittersweet finale ensured Game of Thrones fans will linger on the fate of their favorite characters for some time. It was not able to sustain the momentum it set on the first episode, which rated 92% on the site, and the rest of the previous seasons with nearly perfect scores. Now, on internet database, movie database IMDb, the episode currently has weighted an average of 5/10 based on more than 50,000 users. Still, Game of Thrones star Emilia Clarke, who portrays Daenerys Targaryen, thanked her fans for their support. Now, here are the stories to watch out for later today. The Comelec, sitting as a National Board of Canvassers, will resume its tally on the last two remaining certificates of canvass later today at 10 p.m. Pump prices are set to go up today. Diesel is set to climb by 80 centavos per liter, gasoline up by 90 centavos, and kerosene by 75 centavos. And environmental watchdog Eco Waste Coalition will hold a protest later today to push for the immediate retrieval of Canadian trash dumped into the Philippines back in 2013. And that's how the day is shaping up to be. Join us again next time for another round of Rush. I'm Riza Diaz. We are One News.